again, MMA True Believers. This is Jason Burgos for Sherdog.com, and I am joined tonight with one of the best young talents on the PFL roster. He will be looking to bounce back from a hard-fought loss against last season's champion Lance Palmer and improve on his already impressive 12-2 record at the expense of Freddie Roach at PFL 5 on Thursday night. And that man is Alex Gilpin. Alex, thanks for joining me to talk about your fight that is just a few days away.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Now, so I wanted to first go back to the Lance Palmer fight. I'm curious about how everything for you going into that fight week, like how it went. I asked mainly because when I talked to Morgan Fryer, who's also in the league too, she admitted that going up to that kind of a stage for her at least had an effect on her. Like she lost sleep the night before. She wasn't used to all the the attention, the cameras, all that setup. Now and the spotlight was a pressure. Now you have had some notable stages in the ACB. You've been in a contender series and won. You've competed for Dana White, very close. But you jump into your first fight in this league on ESPN Plus in the main event and against last year's champion, who's one of the best featherweights, honestly, in the world. What was your mindset as fight night drew near, with media responsibilities and your face being on marketing as a headliner and such a big stage? Did you feel a pressure in that moment or lose any sleep, or was it more an anxious excitement in that lead up to that fight?
Well, to be honest, I lose sleep pretty much every single fight. So nothing there. Truthfully, man, I felt better than I ever have. I was in the best shape of my life. I wasn't too nervous. I was confident going in. I had a great warm up. Felt like I got off to a great start, and then at some point in the fight, I just started pushing things and forcing things, and he landed that left hand, and from there it was like I felt like I was getting the better of him up until then, and then I just started forcing things and trying to rush a finish instead of just fighting, and that cost me. So as far as it being a big stage or headlining an ESPN card, that had nothing to do with it. Really no excuse. I felt great going into the fight. Just didn't go my way, man. That happens, I guess, and just what can I do about it now? Nothing. So learn from it and get better, which I've done. So
looking back at it now, you feel that all that stuff didn't have an effect. And do you think these mistakes that you mentioned, like rushing in and doing stuff like that? Do you think maybe on some level it was because by far the toughest opponent of your career, very very talented fight? Do you think that had some kind of influence? You knew how good he was, so were you trying to maybe jump on him or trying to react too quickly and things in your mind just started going too fast and you needed to slow it down?
One thing is I broke down a little too much video on him, and I do that all the time, but
Okay.
he fought a little different than he did normally. He moved a lot more. I know he switched up his camp a little bit, and quite honest, man, I've never seen him throw more than 2 punches in his entire career. So I threw a jab out there looking to pull and counter his overhand, and 2 more punches come and I get dropped and put on my butt. So, right as I was coming back into range, he threw 2 more punches and that knocked me down. And you got to adjust what's in front of you. Video is one thing.
Yeah.
Being in the cage and under the lights, it's a completely different thing. And I've done a pretty good job my entire career of adjusting to what goes wrong. I didn't do that this fight. It had nothing to do with nerves, had nothing to do with the big stage. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. So Lance is great. He's a world champ for a reason. First time, honestly, in my career, I've actually been beat. So we're the adversary, and just got to learn from it. Just that old cliche, you learn more from a loss than from a win. It happens to be true, man. It really does.
Well, I'm definitely going to ask about that and the specifics of what you learned. But before we get to that, I'm glad you brought up Lance changing camps, because he's actually changed camps a good bit in the last year or so. When I talked to him last year, he was a guy that was always known for being a Team Alpha Man. He went from Team Alpha Man, he went to Extreme Couture last season. This season, he was training out in New Jersey around here with Mark Henry and Eddie Alvarez and those guys. And like you said, you watch a lot of film on guys. Was it just his stand-up was far different than you expected? Was it just throwing more? Was it standing up more? Was it his footwork? What were the notable changes that from what you watched in your heavy film watch to what you saw on fight night?
If you look at his entire career before that, he threw 1 or 2 strikes, typically a big overhand. He faked a takedown and launch it. I was looking to step back and counter him as he was off balance. He happened to throw 2 more strikes as I did that, and one of them I didn't see, and it knocked me down. So, and that's credit to Lance, man. He's making improvements still this far in his career, so awesome. yeah, that being said, I mean, that's not the only reason why that happened, but that's just something I've kind of realized. But I've watched a lot of film my entire career in every fight, and every single fight, regardless if I win, if I lose, it hasn't helped me that much. It's just so much different than funny. I like watching a little bit,
Yeah.
just seeing what things you can exploit are just tendencies guys have.
Right.
But other than that, I find it doesn't help that much. So I'm gonna start refraining from it a little bit.
Interesting. Now, the fight itself, nearly 10 minutes of it, of the 15 minutes were, played on the ground with Lance implementing a style that he's been known for. He won the championship doing wrestling, and
Yep.
and you were a wrestling state champion. You
Yep.
wrestled in the Big Ten, somewhere where he's very familiar with Ohio State. I'm sure you have a great deal of confidence in your skills going into that fight. You prepared for this, so in the end, what was it different? Was it the knockdown? Were you rattled from that and it kind of threw you off and it really affected you at certain points in certain rounds? Was he stronger than you expected? Was he a little more craftier than you expected on the ground? Like, how did the grappling play out that it ended up more in his favor than yours?
So to be honest, it wasn't after the knockdown. I feel like I fully recovered and everything,
Okay.
so it wasn't. That wasn't. But the fact that happened in my mind, it's like, oh, I'm down on the scorecard. I gotta finish. I gotta finish. I gotta finish. So like, the second round, I think he shoot in. I think when he got a takedown. Well, so he got a takedown. Yeah. I either tried to pull guard on a guillotine or I forced a right hand and put a little too much pressure going forward. So he did a good job timing that. But then it was like, instead of just working my butterfly or sweeping to get back to my feet, I was just attacking for submissions, just jiu-jitsuing him instead of using my own wrestling. I mean, the only time I tried to take him down, I did. It just so happened that I ran out of time.
Yeah.
And I can't sleep on my own wrestling. I think I gave a little too much respect to his. But yeah, just things I can take away, little things. But yeah, should have worked to get up to my feet a little more instead of looking for arm bars and chokes the whole time.
I'm glad you mentioned.
I said, you can't be forcing things.
I'm glad you mentioned that you took him down. Like, so was the game plan in the fight? Was it like you said, you maybe over respected his wrestling? So was it okay? Let's not play to his game. He's done it well. He's made a career for wrestling. Let's just work to keep it standing and go from there. And in the end, you realize that, oh yeah, I can take him down too. Is that an element of like game plan that maybe backfired at all? Was that a possibility?
Yeah, well, for one, I do understand mixed martial arts wrestling is completely different, but he kind of beat me to it, to be honest. Beginning of the second and third round, he right away, as soon as I pressed him, he would duck under the double leg. One of the takedowns he got, he ducked right into my right hand, which is real good timing on his part. The other one I didn't even defend. I just jumped guard on a guillotine because I, just looking to finish. But it's sweaty in there, man. Second and third round. These things you gotta keep in mind. And that's kind of me, though. I don't think that aspect of me will ever change, pressing for a finish like that.
Yeah.
But you got to fight, man. It's a process. You can't just be looking to finish every single second and just looking for submissions and playing jiu-jitsu off your bat. Like, that's just not that's not really MMA the way that I know how to do it. But is what it is. Just going forward from here, though,
Now, losing to someone like Lance Palmer, there's no shame in that. I mean, the fact that you had to get you got placed up with the champion is always a hard situation. Someone's got to get the champion in the season, and you had that. Now, you mentioned before you learn from the losses, and a lot of fighters I've talked to in the past, they often talk about you learn more from the losses from the wins. And when you go back and look at that fight, going into this fight now with Freddie Roach at PFL 5, what are the things you learned? Was it one of those kind of wins where you had everybody doesn't want to lose. You want to win all your fights, but the losing and those experience moments were just invaluable. Like those things all these things you mentioned have, in the end have become invaluable. And what's some of the other things you really took away from that fight that make you a better fighter for Freddie Roach?
Yeah, man. I mean, each and every single time I step in that cage, I'm getting more and more comfortable, and you'll see the level of cage comfort and just there is no replacement for that in-cage experience under the lights, on the cameras. I mean, regardless how nervous I am or aren't, it is an unfamiliar spot to be.
Right.
And just that in general, I think getting my toes wet in there will help. They are different opponents, so I'll be looking to attack. I'd attack him a little different than I attack Lance, but that being said, that I'm not going to change who I am. I'm still going to press. I'm still going to look for finishes. Stuff just happens in this game, man. but I'm just looking to go forward from it, man, and get this win. So
Speaking of Sunsao, let's talk about him for a bit now. He's the brother of a great fighter and the UFC veteran, Rafael Sunsao. But Freddie hasn't fought in 3 years and is coming off of an ACL injury, and he's all doing it all 35 years old. Does his long layoff come into play for you and your team strategy at all? Is, like, for example, is there a belief he could get off to a bit of a slow start as he kind of gets back into action, into that cage fighting again, and maybe you push the pace a little bit harder in the first round, or that long layups can sometimes be thought of having an effect on striking more so than grappling. So maybe you avoid the grappling instead of doing him a favor by going to the ground and make him strike more. Are any things like that being thought of in a strategy because of this long layoff he's had?
not really at all. To be honest, if you're in the gym training, and you're getting, but obviously you had an injury or whatever, there's a little layoff. Sometimes you can get more hungry from something like that. Sometimes maybe his legs back stronger than it was before. I'm not really putting too much into what he's going to look like or whether he has ring rust or doesn't have ring rust, because I don't believe that exists personally, but particularly if you're training. Okay. And if you underperform in the cage because you haven't been there in a while, that could be a huge part of it. Is just the preparation. But no, not really as far as strategically. I'm not really looking at his layoff. I mean, look at some guys in the UFC. They've had huge layoffs and they've had performances of their careers. So, no, not really put too much stock into that.
Talk to me about the camp you train out of and some of the notable fighters you're working with right now to prepare for Sunsao and his skill set.
Yeah, so right after this last fight, I went home. I worked with Alex Hernandez a little bit, who's going to be fighting all night at UFC San Antonio. Then I got back here to Madison and working with at Chosen Few Gym. Some of the guys I've been working with, Mark Lemminger, Dante Sciro, Alex Polizzi, all of them just fought the bigger guys, but I get the best of both worlds. I got smaller guys to work with, bigger guys. Some of those guys I just mentioned just fought in LFA that just came to Madison. Not sure if you're familiar with the names or not, but you'll be hearing about them in the next couple of weeks.
Now, oh yeah, keep going.
Oh no, that was it.
Okay. Well, right now you are in a tie for the final 3 spots to make the playoffs in the standings. I talked to Steven Seiler a few days ago about the pressure to make sure you get into the tournament and get that win and secure your spot. And he was a finalist last year, and he brought up an interesting idea in that he felt if you don't make the playoffs, there's some precedent in that maybe the PFL doesn't re-sign those guys for the next season. Do you feel an added pressure going into this fight? Just, is this maybe the biggest fight of your career today? Because just on a financial level, even a payday in the quarterfinals is probably, I would assume, the best payday of your career so far. So let alone, making it to the million. Do you feel that pressure, not only as a competitor, you want to win, you want to get to the million, but just to get into the playoffs? Because even just getting the playoffs is important and a real big life-improving number and amount of money to make for you.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I'm looking to do, man. As far as pressure goes, if I sit here and think about it all day, yeah, that could maybe build up a little. But I mean, every fight though is the biggest fight of my career. It's the one in front of you, right? So, also, I'm not. Once that cage door shuts and I'm zoned in, that's not going to be what's on my mind. So,
I talked to a lot of guys last year for PFL Season 1, and even they talked about what they made during the season, what was big deal for them, like Josh Copeland, who made it to the finals in the heavyweight division. He talked about what he made in the season was able to help him get a nutritionist and like meal plans, something he couldn't afford and get even when he was in the UFC. So far, in your experience and going into this fight, are you seeing like, man, even just being a part of the PFL for the season so far, hoping to get to the $1 million, has already shown improvements and good signs and made improvements for you, not only as in your fighting career, but in your life?
Yeah, man. I mean, PFL, they take great care of us, man. And another thing, we're just so active. I just fought 2 months ago. I'm getting another paycheck here. It's just, yeah, they take great care of us, man. And I'm very grateful for that.
How important is activity? Because a lot of guys mentioned that last year too. Like I talked to Vinny Magalhaes, she talked about that it really helped them keep them sharp. And so for some guys, they get out of camp and they get out of shape, and they got to do part of camp is getting back in shape. How important it is activity, especially I'm sure having having fought on smaller organizations, I know how matchups can be hard and fights fall through all the time. How important for you is just to stay active and keep your skills sharp.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And obviously, you make the best improvements leading up to your fight because you're nonstop training, right? And yeah, I like being active. You know, I had a bit of a layoff before this last fight. Not that it affected the fight or anything, but uh, yeah, you know, it's nice to get a little break every now and then. But I definitely prefer activity. You know,
Now let's talk.
paychecks.
I always like to end the interviews on learning a little bit more about the person inside the fighter, so people that are fans of theirs can learn more about them. What are some of your personal passions away from fighting? I was looking over your Instagram. And I saw a lot of very picturesque nature scenes. Are you a person that loves to do hiking and maybe climbing, or are there other things that fans of yours may go, holy shit, Alex Gilpin likes the Handmaid's Tale? I did not expect that. Something like that. Are there other things that people will be surprised about that you are very passionate for outside of fighting?
Well, I cut my own hair, but I don't
Oh, it looks pretty
myself as a
good.
hairstyle.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. There's that hippie nature boy to me a little bit though. I like getting outside, being with nature, going out by the lake or just hiking in the woods or stuff like that. I like to do. Um, after fights, I like beer. So,
Are you a big person that's very, since you like nature, very pro environment, very against how the effects of climate change? Or are you big into those political things and those movements and even protesting advocacy? Any of those things?
no, not really. Yeah. Like I'm team environment for sure, but yeah, I don't really go above and beyond or like strap myself to a tree when a bulldozer. But no, man, I just like scenic stuff. I like traveling, camping, being outside, so that sort of thing.
Any
Like,
favorite types of genres of music? Favorite movies? Have you seen a movie you've loved lately?
I want to see that Lion King movie, but
Really? Did you like the first one? That's
no, I want to see it. Did I like the first one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what I grew up on.
Okay. I was
Man,
more of an Aladdin guy. Lion King, I like Lion King. I'm
I
more of
liked
an
Aladdin.
Aladdin.
Aladdin was good, man.
Did you see the new one, the
Uh,
live action?
no, I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't
No,
see
I
it.
didn't.
I don't want to
Okay.
see it.
Yeah, I'll definitely see that Lion King sometime. Other than that, I can't think of a movie that I've seen lately. Can't really. I haven't watched too many movies lately, but
Yeah, I mean, you're fairly busy with this whole fighting PFL thing, so I can.
I just want to say shout out to my sponsors, Alpha Tile and Stone here, Angel Parcel Logistics, Sups, Kearns Motor Car out of Johnson Creek, and then also the Scrap News, and then Carbon World Health.
Oh, there